Chapter 1. The Whisper of Silicon and the Jungle of Steel. In the damp, endless nights of the subcontinent, the glass facades of Gurgaon and Noida flicker through a heavy, industrial smog. These Ryzen towers were the ultimate totems of 21st century India. For a kid leaving the dry, stagnant fields of Jhansi or Samastipur, this neon wilderness was a 15-year golden dream. The endless chill of the central air, the sleek Western espresso machines, they whispered a promise to every desperate youth. Erase the dirt of your native tongue, pass the accent neutralization test, and survive the graveyard shift. To buy your family a one-way ticket to the modern world. They bought smartphones on interest-free installments and wore crisply ironed shirts, standing before mirrors in the dead of night, practicing the flat vowels, the hard American T's. And when a proud father back home told the neighbors, "My son is doing business with Americans," the dignity was worth the exhaustion. But this prosperity was never built on a real industrial foundation. It was built on voice arbitrage, and in 2026, a quiet mutation began in the silent server farms across the Pacific. LLM voice agents, gentle, tireless, and operating with near-zero latency, are deploying at a cost of 2 cents an hour. They are systematically erasing the carbon-based worker. In the offices of Bengaluru and San Francisco, young AI founders are pitching to eager venture capitalists. Once you hire our AI, you will never hire a human agent again. For less than $1,100 a month, a single software license replaces 15 experienced operators. They speak 50 languages, feel zero fatigue, and carry no psychological trauma. An irresistible miracle for multinational corporations in London and New York, and a silent execution for the 9x9 rooms of Gurgaon. Chapter 2. Macaulay's Legacy and the Civilizing meat grinder in every dry analysis of India's digital workforce. The name Thomas Babington Macaulay is raised and then dismissed. They quote his infamous words, "A class of persons Indian in blood, but English in taste." But no one looks down at the machine he assembled in Calcutta 2 centuries ago. This was never a mission of education. It was a calculated, three-dimensional demolition of local mindsets. First, the systemic erasure of local knowledge. Under Macaulay's Education Act of 1835, the colonial state choked off funding for traditional Sanskrit and Arabic institutions. It redirected every rupee to Western science and English literature. Macaulay wrote with supreme arrogance, "A single shelf of a good European library is worth the whole native literature of India and Arabia." This was not preference. This was intellectual castration. Overnight, millennia of medicine and philosophy were relegated to native superstition. Second, the collusion of the native elite. History is cruel. Macaulay's policy was not just imposed, it was eagerly invited by India's own ruling classes. Ram Mohan Roy, the father of modern India, begged the Governor-General to abandon Sanskrit in favour of English. To the Bengali reformists, Sanskrit was the language of priestly oppression. English was the hammer to break it. And the high-caste scribes of the Kayastha class saw the immediate rent value of the new language. They flooded the British schools, becoming the first generation of Macaulay's children, maintaining their ancient dominance over the lower castes and the marginalized. Third, the downward filtration theory. Macaulay openly declared that the East India Company had no interest in educating the masses. They only needed to civilize the top tier and let that Western obedience trickle down, like slow poison into the lower strata of the society. When the call centres exploded in the late 90s, tech giants simply dusted off Macaulay's playbook. They repackage 2 centuries of colonial submission as a digital miracle. Chapter 3. The Moat of the Accent and the Split Voice. In post-colonial India, English was never a bridge of equality. It was, and remains, a ruthless class filter. After independence, northern politicians tried to crown Hindi as the sole official language, sparking a fierce revolt in the south. To Tamil Nadu, New Delhi's Hindi was an imperial threat. English was the lesser evil. The compromise was tragic. Public schools fed the poor with substandard regional instruction, while elite private academies armed the wealthy with pure British accents. English became a moat, built to keep the underclass out. And for those who could not afford private tuition, those carrying the heavy accent of their mother tongue. The path into the global economy required a paid, deeply violent process of psychological self-mutilation. In accent bleaching boot camps, high-priced coaches taught them to roll their tongues and swallow their accents, like speaking with sand in their mouths. Before they were allowed to answer a single call, they underwent the Namaran, the renaming. They were baptized as Nathan, Nancy, or Ryan. Thank you for calling. This is Nathan. This dissociation, the daily act of wearing a stranger's face, is a nail driven slowly into a young person's dignity. They had to navigate a cruel linguistic hierarchy, where British English sat at the absolute top, and the Indian accent languished at the bottom. Southern Indian kids, with their rapid tempo and heavy mother tongue influence, carried the deepest anxiety. Yet they swallowed the humiliation, because those 20,000 rupees a month paid for a sister's dowry and kept a sick father in a private ward. Then, in 2026, history delivered its ultimate irony. Real-time accent modification software, like Sana's, appeared, using phonetic algorithms to instantly mask any Indian accent into Midwestern American English. It saved jobs. It kept outsourcing profitable for a brief moment. But when that very technology was integrated into LLM voice agents, the West realized they didn't even need the masked human anymore. Macaulay wanted clerks, not thinkers. And that legacy built the Indian IT miracle, producing millions of code translators and system testers. But today, the cyber empire has no use for their physical bodies. Macaulay's army of clerks, after 200 years of evolution, has been condensed into clean, flawless code, running in Virginia. Chapter 4. Falling into the night of grease and rust. When 10,000 quality checkers and support agents were rendered obsolete, and net recruitment in the tech sector collapsed by 90%. Young men, unable to return to their villages, yet cast out from the glass towers, pushed open the heavy doors and walked into the roaring streets. On the edge of Sector 62, Noida, at 11:45 p.m. The stench of melting rubber and open sewage hangs like a greasy blanket over the chest. Streetlights stretch the shadows of rusted motorcycles and delivery boxes. A rider, from a forgotten village in Samastipur, sits silently by his exhaust pipe. His knuckles are permanently stained with a dull, chemical yellow, the mark of 40 rupee engine oil, and a rusted chain, his new badge of honor. His parents, seduced by YouTube videos promising easy money, took an 18% interest loan to buy this bike. They thought he was becoming a micro-entrepreneur, but when he refused to carry 60 litres of water up 4 flights of stairs in 40-degree heat, his acceptance rate fell to 88%. The grey loading wheel on his screen, and the message, "Account under automatic review." This is how venture capitalist revolutions discard their children. There is no HR number to call, no physical office to protest, only an optimization algorithm humming on a remote server. In that mathematical formula, his exhaustion, his physical limits, his pride, are nothing but friction to be smoothed out of the system. Under the cold blue light of their phones, dozens of riders wait outside cloud kitchens. They do not know that the algorithm is not just calculating the fastest route, it is calculating exactly how many accounts to terminate before dawn, to keep the remaining labour desperate and cheap. Chapter 5. The Noose of the Micro-Debts. Back in the 9x9 room, renting for 8,000 rupees, the smartphone, once a magic wand to the modern world, now glows with a suffocating, pale light. The desk is littered with digital collection notices, smiling cartoon birds, bright yellow logos, apps that hide a lethal 40% interest rate behind friendly interfaces. To survive in Delhi is a game of precise, unforgiving mathematics. Rent, electricity, and the monthly payment for the phone required to run the gig apps. When the income is stable, it is called an investment. But when your account is terminated by a server in the cloud, these micro-debts turn into steel traps. This is the new enclosure movement of the 21st century. The risk engines did not grant credit because they believed in these young men. They granted it because they predicted their desperation. When the first payment fails, you download the second app to pay the first until the compound interest rolls like an avalanche and buries you. And when you can no longer borrow, when the rent is due, the automatic default protocols activate in silence. The smiling cartoon bird reveals its teeth. The AI does not just call you, it clones your entire contact list. In a matter of seconds, an army of deepfake harassment bots is mobilized, using authoritative, flawless, terrifying synthetic voices. They begin dialing. Your uncle, your old high school teacher, the neighbours who respected your family in the village. This is New Delhi District Court. Your relative is wanted for malicious financial fraud. The deepfake voice, calm, precise, and unyielding, delivers your social execution. Before you can even explain to your parents the fragile dignity you spent 15 years building in the city is crushed into dust in a 3-second call. You sit on the concrete floor, staring at the cold screen. The phone is no longer a tool of liberation. It is an electronic collar, tightening with every tick of the clock. Outside, the glass towers of Cyber City continue to paint the night sky with dreams of progress. But to Macaulay's children, the illusion is dead. Those towers are not monuments to the future. They are giant, silent vacuum pumps designed to extract the flesh of a generation and convert it into clean, bloodless capital for the servers that never sleep.